to the July 18th meeting of the Planning Commission. Tonight's agenda is available on the counter, along with the request to speak cards that you please fill out and give over to the side. We'll start off with Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Guerrero. Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. A reminder to everyone that requests to speak cards should be completed and turned in to the clerk prior to the completion of any staff presentation. For those wishing to speak on items not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of this commission, please write the item number on your card. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, so all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful at all times. Thank you. Presentation by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the Commission. The Commission is prohibited by law from discussing issues not on the agenda brought to them at this time. No? Okay. Item B, correspondence and staff communications from the Planning Commission Secretary.
Yes. Good evening, Commission. Tonight, a few items to note from last night's City Council meeting. There were several items of note that are important. First of all, the City Council did approve its 2-year budget for this next 2 fiscal years, which is important. Also approved the next Capital Improvement Program budget, or CIP budget, for the next 5-year period. I also brought a minor general plan update item before the Council last night to sort of re-engage our efforts on updating our general plan, which, for those of you who have been on the Commission for a long time, will remember that we did start that some years ago and have had to put it on hold for various reasons, but we are back moving on that. So kind of provided a game plan for the Council on our next few upcoming steps, some of which will certainly include some visits to the Planning Commission on general plan update related matters. And then lastly, the Council heard a presentation last night on an update to the city's greenhouse gas inventory, which would be part of which would be woven into our climate action plan, which is a subset of our general plan. So those matters will be coming back before the Planning Commission over the next several months. So that concludes staff's correspondence at this time.
Okay, thank you. First item on the consent agenda is consideration and approval of the minutes from the June 6th Special Commission meeting.
I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes of June the 6th.
I'll second.
Thank you. That was a motion by Commissioner Moore and seconded by Commissioner Liebig. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam Chairperson, were there any ex parte communications?
Oh, thank you. Do I have any ex parte communications? No. Thank you. We'll start on with the regular agenda. Item number 2 is a public hearing regarding fence and hedge height variance at 616 Stone Boulevard.
Yes, I'll present this particular item. As you stated, this matter is a request for a variance for fence and hedge height within the front yard setback for property at 616 Stone Boulevard. This item originally was brought to our attention as a code enforcement matter, as a fence which is shown in is most clearly in attachment 2 of the photograph to your staff report. A wood fence was constructed within the front yard setback at this property, which exceeds the height limit. Ordinarily in this district, the height limit for a fence in a front yard setback that's a fence that's solid is 3 feet. And so in this case, this is a 6-foot fence, which obviously does not comply with that standard. Also, upon going out for a site visit after this fence, also noted this significant bamboo hedge that's also located within the front yard setback, which also technically has a 3-foot height limit in the front yard setback. So the applicant was the property owner, Mr. Gerald, who's with us this evening, has sought relief from the 3-foot height standard in the form of a variance. This would apply to both the fence and the bamboo hedge. Staff, in looking at this particular project and visiting the site and surrounding neighborhood, does feel that the required findings, for a variance can be made. This is an irregularly shaped lot that, unlike many other lots on this block, actually fronts on Stone Boulevard rather than has a side onto Stone Boulevard. That does have the net effect of having a taller, a more restrictive fence standard than many other property owners along the street in the same zoning classification do have. And I think it's most evident that there's a fence of this height, similar height, both directly across the street from this property and also immediately next door. On the photograph on a page, attachment 2, the fence that's on the far left, you can only see a sliver of it, but that's actually the fence that's on the property next door, which actually is a side fence. We do have some additional photos if that would help the Commission's discussion on this particular item. But staff does believe the required findings for this variance can be met, and we do recommend approval of it this evening. So at this point in time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
With Commissioner Liebig, do you have any questions?
Thank you. I have one. It's regarding the bamboo itself. Just for clarification, you're considering the bamboo a hedge versus a tree?
Certainly we consider it to be tantamount to a hedge. Hedges, unfortunately, is not defined in our municipal code, but hedges are specifically identified in the section of the municipal code that deals with fence height, and so we were treating that in that regard. But should the Commission find that is not indeed a hedge, then the Commission could excise that from this particular action if it so chose.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That was my only question.
No questions, but I appreciate the conditions, the way they're outlined. I think it's very helpful to have it so clear. Thank you.
Commissioner Moore?
Well, I guess I have the question on the hedge itself, and you're going to have him trim the hedge to 12 feet?
That is our recommendation to the
And then he'll
Commission.
trim it again every month to 12 feet, since it grows about 2 feet a month, it seems like. I mean, that's going to have to be the requirement, because the neighbors I talked to over there were concerned about it going right up into the telephone lines and the power lines. And, I don't even know why we would allow a hedge to be 12 feet high when that's not allowed anywhere in our city. I mean, if it wants to be a hedge, it can be a hedge, but it should be reasonable. Why would you allow a hedge everywhere in town to be 3 feet high and this hedge to be 12? What was your justification for that?
Well,
Except for the fact bamboo grows so fast.
yeah, we certainly did want to include the hedge into this variance application, since we had to treat the fence as well. This is the front of this home that does front on Stone Boulevard, which, although it is a neighborhood street, is a very visible and busy street. The applicant has already experienced some vandalism of his vehicle that's parked there in the driveway that's between the hedge and the fence. And the hedge certainly does afford his property, which is set as a relatively small lot in this area. It does afford him some degree of privacy on this property. But certainly if the Commission wished to separate the hedge from the fence consideration tonight, we would certainly not object to that.
My other question is, David, now, are we only talking about the fence on the front here that we have the photograph of?
That's correct. There are additional fences that have been recently constructed, toward the rear of the property, but those are beyond the front yard setback and thus are okay.
Can they be as high as they are?
They are 7 feet. They are 7 feet, and Mr. Gerald did receive a building permit for those fences recently. Once they exceed 6 feet, you need a building permit, but you
Right.
can't have it as high as 7 feet in your
that's what
side.
they are?
Yeah, in your side and rear. Yeah, they're 7.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Guerrero?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. I have one question. When I'm looking at the picture of the bamboo. If you're facing the front of the house, to the right of it, is that a separate hedge or bush? I guess in front of it? Pardon?
Perhaps we might have the applicant clarify
Oh, sure.
that for us.
Open the public hearing. Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. The applicant would like to come forward.
Good evening. This has been a long road for me to toll, but to me it's worth it. The reason why I planted bamboo is for privacy. Stone Boulevard has turned into a thoroughfare, and I have pictures I've taken with a speedometer in front of my house. The speed limit is 25, and people are driving 35, 40, 41, 50 miles an hour. Diesel trucks, I've taken pictures of those. My lot is unusual. I have 75-foot frontage where my neighbors have 50. And I feel the fence gives me somewhat protection against that street and as a noise barrier too. And I beautified it by putting a 20-foot-long box in there, and I've filled it with flowers and dahlias, and it's quite nice. I feel I've beautified the neighborhood. And the bamboo, again, is living there it was like living in a fishbowl when I first moved there, because Maryland Court is right across the street from me, and people come out at night with their lights on. They'd shine right into my house. So until the bamboo grew, I'd have to live with my blinds always closed. And during the day, I'd have to close them too, because people could just see in. So it has provided me with privacy, and it doesn't grow that fast. It's black bamboo. I looked it up. It's slow growing. It grows 2 to 3 feet a year, and the bamboo has been in there for 4 years, and it's reached maybe 12 feet, and it's not going to head towards the power lines. I know that PG&E comes and whacks everything down. I had a tree where that fence was before, and every year they came and whacked that tree and made it look like a chair. So I'm sure that if they want to whack my bamboo, they will. But I did trim it the other day. I trimmed a lot of it. And the tree next door, it's a pittosporum, and the PG&E has butchered it. They cut the whole top of it off. Now the lady that lives there, she's cut the other back side off, and then I cut it off from my side because it grows. At one time, it grew all the way to my front door, and it was in bloom, and I was sneezing, and I said, Diane, I need to cut your tree. So I've talked to her about it. She says she can't afford to have it cut down, so it stands. But that is a very messy tree, and she knows that. She would like to get rid of it, but, that's her deal. But we're here about me. So, like I said, the bamboo is beautiful, and I got the notice to abate it on Earth Day, which really kind of, I went, whoa, get rid of bamboo on Earth Day. Okay, let's do that. No, it's just whatever. It's the way I got the notice, but it just kind of shocked me. And like I said, when I called about the vandalism to my car, the officer told me there had been 17 acts of vandalism in the last 30 days in my neighborhood and 2 car thefts. So the vandalism is very high. They come by with the teenagers with paintball guns and shoot at our houses. They throw rocks at our houses. They throw bottles at our houses. They've cut tires, broken windows out. They've broken the back window of my car out, which cost me a great deal of money because it wasn't insured for glass. But anyway, I feel I beautified that street, and I'm a senior citizen. I cannot afford to go anywhere else. I'm stuck there. This is my 3rd property in West Sacramento. I've lived here 21 years, and that's my last stand. Thank you for considering it.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? No? I do have one question. I see the tree
Yes.
here.
That's
Is this a separate bush here, or is that something?
That's all the bamboo I planted. That tree on your right there is the tree I was just talking about.
Right, and that's on, I see
That's
that on
on
the
her
other,
property.
on the other side of the
Right.
property line. Okay. Thank you.
Just as a quick question, how long have you lived there?
I've owned the property since 2005. I've only lived there for 5 years.
And there wasn't any traffic there when you first moved in?
There was a lot of traffic.
Oh, okay. I just didn't think it changed much over there.
Well, in 8 years it has, because of the volume of traffic and the speed. No one's there to control it, so the people are just flying up and down that street every day.
I think if you went outside, you'd see the patrolmen out there. They're out there. I've seen them out there when I
Really?
drive
On
by.
Stone
Yes, sir.
Boulevard? Boy, I'd like to see that. But
Thank you.
thank you.
I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And do we have any motions? Do we have any other questions,
I have a comment,
comments?
if you wouldn't mind. Because I think the fence and the planter box look great out there, and the rooster's terrific. But I think that the bamboo is severe and really violates what we do. And I'm not sold on the bamboo at all, and not that it be 12 feet high. I mean, if it was 3 feet or maybe even 6 feet high, just to try to give them a little buffer in the front, I might understand it, but 12 feet, even if it only grows 2 or 3 feet a year, you're gonna have to trim it at least twice a year. That seems like a huge expense to go out there and do that 2 or 3 times a year. And if it gets up to 12 feet, I'm not sure you can do it as an individual. And the bamboo part bothers me. The other part I think looks terrific. I think he's done a great job out there, but the bamboo does bother me a lot. I'm a little concerned about it. That's my comment.
Any other comments?
I actually almost have the opposite opinion on that. It's just the bamboo, it's not quite a tree. It's just like a large grass. But if it grows taller, it will thin out at the bottom, so it will actually be to his benefit to keep it trimmed. Otherwise, it won't serve the purpose that he needs. So that was it. Otherwise, I'm relatively indifferent on
I
that.
just have a quick comment as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Liebig. Commissioner Guerrero?
And, I think I've also experienced where on Marshall Road, there's been a lot of speeding down on that road as well. I run in the morning, no police officers available. So to that aspect, I've also seen probably the lack of presence, an occasional, gauging of the speed by, when they put those machines out. And that might help deter, but it's probably not out enough, in my opinion. Maybe, trying to see what we can do to work with law enforcement. We've got a new police chief, so, hey, maybe that might help. But I can understand and am sensitive, because in my neighborhood, I've seen more graffiti, and I live along a path where there's no lighting, so I know that attracts, more kids coming out, especially during the summer, to do mischievous things in the neighborhood. So to that aspect, I am sensitive and see you're making every effort you can to keep your home safe, and can appreciate that.
Thank you. I have a close friend that used to live on 19th and Park, so I'm very familiar with the speeding, and after reading the attachments, the kids in the backyard and things like that, because I've been witness to it. The height of the bamboo is a little high, and I don't know if the picture that I didn't get a chance to drive by it within this last couple of weeks, but the picture here, it seems higher than 12 feet, but I'd be okay with 12 feet and keeping it that way. I'm just assuming that the code enforcement will keep that in line, or will give him notice. Okay. That's the only comments I have. Go ahead, Commissioner Sandy.
So when we deliberate on a variance, I really focus on the required findings. And when I first read this, for me, I have to be persuaded that there are special circumstances and that are applicable to the property. And in particular, I'm persuaded because of the size, shape, topography, and surroundings. So I'm actually persuaded that this action is sound. So I'm supportive of it moving forward. But that's always a question, because I worry that we do something for one case and then, everyone wants 12-foot bamboo or something, and that we have to be really sensitive to that when we're making these variance decisions, because it's very much a case-by-case basis. So I'm persuaded that in this case, this makes sense. So I will move the recommended action.
I second.
Moved by Commissioner Sandine and seconded by Commissioner Guerrero. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One opposed?
We'll read the appeal procedure. Any person wishing to appeal this action of the Planning Commission to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the City Clerk within 15 days of tonight's action. And as always, that appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to item number 3.
Sandra White will be presenting this item.
Good evening, Vice Chair Perez and members of the Planning Commission. The applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit to construct a 2,208 square foot single-family home in the high-density residential zone at 309 F Street. The applicant is also requesting a reduction in front yard setback. The Washington specific plan requires a 10-foot front yard setback measured from the right-of-way line. The applicant is requesting approval to reduce the front yard setback from 10 feet to 7 feet, which would be a minor deviation from the Washington specific plan. The applicant is also seeking approval of a variance to reduce the side yard setback from 8 feet to 5 feet on the easterly side of the project site, and a variance is also being requested to increase the floor area ratio from 0.50 to 0.69. All of the findings can be made for the conditional use permit to allow the construction of the new single-family home. The required finding for recommending a minor deviation from the Washington specific plan to reduce the front yard setback from 10 feet to 7 feet can be made for the single-family home. All of the variance findings can be made for reducing the side yard setback from 8 feet to 5 feet. However, all of the variance findings could not be made for increasing the floor area ratio from 0.50 to 0.69. The second finding could not be made because there is nothing unique about this property relative to the location, the size, or surroundings that would justify an increase in the floor area ratio. And there is nothing unique about the site that prevents the applicant from constructing a single-family home on the site. If based on the required 0.50 floor area ratio, a 1,600 square foot single-family home can be built, which is a reasonably sized home. And if the variance is denied by the Planning Commission to exceed the floor area ratio, the proposed single-family home will have to be redesigned to accommodate a smaller home. In conclusion, staff recommends that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing, certify that the Planning Commission has determined that the Class 3 categorical exemption is the appropriate level of environmental review under CEQA, and finds that the categorical exemption represents the independent judgment of the city. Approve the requested conditional use permit subject to the findings and conditions as identified in the staff report. Approve a minor deviation to the Washington specific plan to reduce the front yard setback from 10 feet to 7 feet, subject to the findings and conditions as identified in the staff report. Approve the requested variance to reduce the side yard setback along the easterly property line from 8 feet to 5 feet, subject to the findings and conditions as identified in the staff report, and deny the requested variance to inclusive floor area ratio from 0.50 to 0.69. Any questions for me?
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Liebig.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you. One part that I got tripped up on a little bit was the numbers on the front setback. The front setback starts 17 feet behind the sidewalk. How does that relate to the houses that are adjacent to this property?
The houses on that block, they're of the same size. There's one house that seems to be, based on our record, seems to be in the city's right-of-way, and there's a second house that seems to be located approximately 5 feet from the city's right-of-way.
So this house, if approved, would sit approximately 2 feet farther back than its adjacent house? or
Yes.
home? Okay, thank you.
This is a very unusual situation because the rights-of-way out here are so wide. They're 80 feet, which is a holdover from the original town of Washington map. A typical residential street is about 56 feet wide, right-of-way line to right-of-way line. So the homes, if the right-of-way were left the way it is, the right-of-way line, extends well beyond the back of the sidewalk. And so this home would be, set back, under the Washington plan, would be set back essentially from the curb, nearly 30 feet, which is really not what we're, seeking from a, active pedestrianscape, in this particular neighborhood and elsewhere. So that's sort of the underlying condition that is unusual about this part of town relative to other areas.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Questions for staff? I don't have any questions either.
The
I'll go-
applicant is available to answer any questions as well.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing.
Testing.
You're on.
Madam Chair Perez, Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be here before you this evening. Farmers market's out there, and we're in here, yay. I'm Michael Brady. I'm the architect working with the applicant, Rich Sanchez, and Jim Petty is also here. He's the builder for the project. So it's kind of a design-build owner team that you see before you, so it's kind of exciting in that regard. I also want to thank both David and Sandra for a very good job in working with us through this project. It was challenging in the beginning to get our arms around all of the findings and the responses for that, and so it was good to have their cooperation and help in that regard. So our staff doesn't get many thanks, and I'd like to thank them for that. To kind of cut to the chase a little bit, on the cover page, items 1 through 5 were in agreement with those findings, and we're really good to go there. Item 6 is kind of the controversy for the FAR reduction or increase from 0.5 to 0.69. Now, if the conditional use permit is going from a higher density R3 lot use to a single-family use R1, so that transition, that reduction, it kind of matches the neighborhood infill project. It's a really good infill project for the neighborhood. And those of you who have kind of driven through there, you're familiar and know the situation. So my premise is, and this is kind of a finding as well, that hopefully we can all support. My premise is that if the conditional use permit is approved, allowing, and it does, it is supportive in the findings, to reduce the R3 to the R1, then the R3 has an FAR of 0.5, but an R1 doesn't have an FAR requirement. So it would be logical to me that the FAR would go away, really, in connection with the fact that we are going from a higher density use to a single family use. So that's kind of the reason or the finding that I would present to the Commission to support the request for the 0.69 FAR in that context. Let's see, I think that really does explain the only item 6 that is in question in our minds as the applicant. So I'd like to, if there are no questions of me, I'd like to introduce Jim Petty, who's the builder. He has a couple of comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Petty. I'm a real estate development. I'm a partner in a real estate development and general contracting firm. And for approximately 35 years, I've been working in the Sacramento area in both public works contracting and in developing residential properties, which we rent. We develop them for rental. I've known the builder, the owner, Mr. Sanchez, for a long time, and I got a call from him in December telling me the good news that he had purchased a lot in Sacramento that he was quite hopeful about. He had found a great location, and we joined with him and investigated the situation, and we agree that West Sacramento has a real great future there in that Washington neighborhood, and we've studied your Washington-specific plan, and we find it to be very visionary and looking forward to a great future, and Mr. Sanchez really intends to live there, and it'll be a owner-occupied home. As part of our effort in the last 6 months to bring this project forward, one of my roles has been to find construction financing for the project. And given the high fees that are related to the development of the Washington neighborhood, we understand, it costs money to bring on a renewal of an area like that, so the fees are somewhat high. The requirements today we have for the environmental requirements, the recycling of construction materials, the fire sprinkling in the house. There's a lot of regulations that we will comply with in building this house, and in order to, and we're finding regarding the construction loan situation, we have a high-cost construction project, and we're faced with a very conservative financing market where we're being required to have a 70% value to loan ratio, which means we've got to get, in order to build this house, the cost is about $350,000 total. So we're going to need an appraisal for the finished project to be about $500,000. And that's going to be pretty tough to do if because of this FAR restriction, we have to reduce the square footage down to 1,600 feet. That it would be very difficult to get a $500,000 appraisal for the finished project, if we were proposing a 1,600 square foot house versus a 2,200 square foot house. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention and let you know that, that's critical to this project, that we're able to obtain the right financing, and we hope that you can support our project. We want it to be an addition to the community here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to come up here and say a few words. I'm going to be real brief and just add to what both Mr. Brady and Mr. Petty just said. But I'm going to try to fill in a little gap for you with regards to my personal situation. Both my wife and I work downtown. It makes great sense for us to build a house in West Sacramento. As Mr. Petty mentioned, we feel it's a great community to invest in, and we're willing to do that. But with that said, it really has to make sense for my family and I to live there, and have a couple of daughters, college bound. So we really need the space on top for their living arrangements. So we're trying to comply with all the regulations and rules. I have hired Mr. Brady and Mr. Petty to help me out. I certainly understand criteria, and I'm trying to do that to comply with all the criteria, but if it doesn't make sense for my family, it's really hard for me to make this type of investment and move forward with this project. The thing about the FAR, and I certainly appreciate David's and Ms. White's help on this. We met with them several times, and I certainly understand their ruling on the FAR item. But when, you know, and I'm trying to be practical about this from my perspective, I'll be reducing the top floor significantly, but the footprint of the house still remains the same. So when I think about that, how does that really impact the community? I'll still have a partial second floor, and the footprint of the house on the first floor remains the same. So I'm kind of scratching my head. Does that really make sense? And I'm having trouble with actually that criteria, and that's why, as Mr. Brady pointed out, that's why you don't have a FAR requirement on the R1 zone. Because I think when you look at it from that perspective, you know, you have to scratch your head on why that criteria is there for a single-family home. So anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. Again, we're excited about moving into West Sac. As Mr. Petty mentioned, we want this to be our home. It makes sense for us. We're able to walk to work. We like the River Cats. And, you know, we want to live here. But, again, it has to make practical sense for us to invest this kind of money. And I'm willing to do it, but, you know, cutting that second floor by half, and that's what it turns out to be, just it's not workable. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Any other commissioners have questions for the applicant? Yep. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Do we have questions for staff?
I'm trying to get my head around it sounds like there's a request to change the zoning from the applicant, which I don't think we're doing tonight.
No,
Okay, because I think I heard that from
that's not.
R3 to R1. Okay, so because
Yeah,
that's where the
Yeah, that's correct. The R3
Okay, so-
zone allows for single-family
Right.
on a conditional basis, and we have done a few use permits for single-family in this neighborhood over the years. I do want to try to help the discussion. We certainly appreciate the comments we heard from the applicant team this evening. I mean, the floor ratio standards in the multifamily zone, really is something that's more generally applied in commercial projects, industrial projects, and, larger multifamily, attached type projects. We really don't apply it in, single-family residential, areas. So they are caught a little bit in a somewhat of a technicality here, because this is a multifamily zone, although we are referring to a lot that is very small even by single-family, standards. So that's kind of why we're here tonight, is regarding that, and this is a a matter in Washington is we certainly have struggled with previously over there, and then that FAR of 0.5, especially with the density range that would otherwise be allowed in this multifamily zone, it really is on the low side. It's not what we would have today if we were rewriting the zoning ordinance. So, but given that they are in the R3 zone, the FAR standard does apply, which contrasts if this were a single family or even an R2 lot, they would not have an FAR standard to worry about. So I want to try to put that out there in context, but we are left with that variance tool, which admittedly is somewhat of a blunt tool, but the findings for variance are in the government code and they are what they are. So it is a matter of whether or not we believe all of those required findings can be made, because all of them must be made to be able to approve the variance. So we really are right now supportive of the variance, other than the finding number 2 as it pertains to the special circumstances applicable to the property. Should the commission do believe that there are special circumstances applicable here, it certainly could entertain the variance, and we could assist the commission in phrasing anything along those lines if it were the commission's interest. But it is a variance we're contemplating tonight. It is not a zone change. This is a land use of a single-family unit and otherwise what is in a multifamily zone, albeit on a very, very small lot. Not be suitable for multifamily development at 3,200 square feet.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Sandine? No. Commissioner Liebig? Yes.
No questions, actually.
Actually, I think my question was answered too, you know. I mean, this is your uniqueness of this, though, David, would it not be the fact that it's going to be a single-family home rather than a multifamily home? And if it were a multifamily home, I mean, I'm not even sure how you'd get 3 cars on the lot. I mean, the special circumstances to me is, and I drove the neighborhood and saw a number of homes that are maybe not quite the same size, but similar, and they're stretching the boundaries on some of those small lots. And I mean, it would seem to me that the way you justify this, we were able to justify everything except the FAR, and the FAR is justified by the fact that it's a single-family home. And I mean,
Well,
just that in and of itself might be sufficient to.
The special circumstances finding pertains to the property, not necessarily what they wish to use it for. However, the presence of other single-family homes on R3 lots in this area, small lots, certainly lends credence to the first setback regarding special privilege, which is we can't grant a special privilege, nor can we deny a privilege enjoyed by others, in the same zoning district. So where we have sort of hit the bit of the roadblock was related to the special circumstances as it pertains to this lot. And that can be size, shape, topography, location, surroundings, etc. I mean, those are the factors that go into this particular finding. And so something like what we discussed in the prior item where, is in a regular shape compared to other lots, has that direct frontage where most lots side on. I mean, those are the type of examples of at least what we consider to be special circumstances, on the previous item. Here it's, we don't have something necessarily as readily obvious as this odd triangular, shaped lot in a sea of rectangular lots.
I totally agree, but
So-
you have such a small lot that you really can't build multifamily on it, I don't think.
I mean, at best, maybe a 2-unit building. I mean, one of the original concepts in this project, was a 2-unit, structure with basically 1 unit on the lower level, another unit on the upper level.
Maybe.
That was one concept. Originally, then ultimately they decided to pursue what is a single-family residence.
I mean, to me,
similar
the size of
shape.
the lot dictates the fact that you can't really build a decent multifamily unit there. And you're not going to build a decent unit there, multifamily, if you reduce it to a single-family unit. It's just a single-family residential unit, and you have a nice home built on it. Seems to be a better alternative than having a multifamily unit that you can't park your cars in the driveway because you don't have a driveway because it's not big enough.
Oh,
I mean,
and we agree with that, and that's
I
why
know you do.
that's
I'm
why
just
we're
trying to tell
supporting
you.
the
To me,
supporting
that's
the use
why-
permit side of this thing. So,
To me,
us,
that's my justification of how we could grant this, is the fact that the lot is just really too small to build a decent multifamily unit on. And if he's going to reduce it to a single-family unit, and it's a single-family residential unit, I think you could justify the justification to do this.
Yeah, so where Commissioner Moore, where you're going, and I can throw this out there for the discussion, is that if the commission felt that this property, given its size and dimensions and frontage on the street, which are all substandard by the Washington Plan and other zoning criteria, that did constitute a special circumstance for properties in the same zoning district. Then you could presumably make that finding number 2 and approve that variance for that FLURRY ratio, and then the project could proceed as it was proposed. So that is an option the commission can consider, and we because we do believe that all the other required findings can be made, and we do recommend approval of those, so this is the only one that's sort of outstanding. But this presence of this, very small lot, substandard to the plan and everything, if the commission's view that does equate to a special circumstance regarding it, and size of the property is certainly an example criterion for this particular finding, then the commission could move in favor of the variance related to the flurry ratio this evening.
That would be my preference.
Commissioner Guerrero?
I am digesting all the information that I've received, and I can see Commissioner Moore's point of view, and taking a look at it from a different angle, and would like to hear if there's any, those that have spoken about this, the witnesses, if there's any other additional comment from them about that, if they wanted to. I don't know if we can reopen it up if they have any additional comment.
I'm sorry, I think this, at this point, this is between us, deliberation-wise. I don't need to hear any more persuasion, and I do agree with Charlie on this. I was looking for a reason, and I know that's not the right way to go about it, but we are increasing density in this area. The buildings are going higher, and it's surrounded by really big buildings, and there's a parking structure nearby. It fits. So it makes sense logically. Now it's that floor area ratio issue and finding reason for variance. So I would actually agree with Charlie.
The purpose behind floor ratio really is twofold. One is density, and also one is visual bulk. Density here, whether it's at 0.5 or 0.69, it's a single-family unit, is the same. And from a visual bulk standpoint, we're still talking about a relatively small structure overall that, even as proposed, doesn't appear to loom ominously over other nearby structures or of things of that nature. So, from an FAR standpoint, for what really FAR is designed to address, it doesn't seem to run afoul of those kind of principles. So it really comes back down to is the special circumstances that are applicable to this property.
There's one final comment to you. Is there a way to put something on the title that says this property has to remain single family?
I don't know that we can compel that from a
We
legalese.
can do anything, but I don't know if it's legal, I mean, doing it is one thing, but we've done something similar in the past, and I was trying to rack my brain to think of it, but it was like, when they register the property that it has to remain single-family residential or something. I think that's a great thing for the attorney to check out for you, David.
If I might be able to opine on that, if the project were an affordable housing project, as an example, we would be able to have deed restrictions. This is not. Therefore, the property owner is able to develop the property in any such way that the general plan and zoning code designations permit.
Could he voluntarily say he would agree to do that?
People can always volunteer. I wouldn't recommend that.
It does say in the conditions that the floor area ratio for the new single-family home, I mean, it's written there, so if that,
Yeah,
if
I
that's
was just trying
persuasive enough.
to take it to
persuasive
the
enough.
next step. I don't know.
Yeah, the project was ultimately constituted to us as a single-family home, and thus from a parking standpoint, for example, we have parked it as a single-family home. If they were to think about the two-unit structure again, we'd have to relook at parking as an example. That would change a little bit, but it was presented as a single-family residence, so we have been treating it as such.
Mr. Tilley, or Ms. White, this project was the neighbors were notified as per usual. Okay.
No, didn't hear anything.
Any other questions or comments for staff? Well, I too agree with Charlie on this. I'm looking, I drove by and I was looking at the house next door, and I'm assuming that's the one that was 1,823 square feet. And it, with it closer to the street, it would seem like it would be, from the street wise, look bigger than the house that wants to be, than the applicant's house. So I just don't, I understand why the FAR is there. I just was trying to figure out a way that we could get it to work, exactly.
Well, we do have some suggested language if the commission is leaning toward feeling it can be able to make that one outstanding finding in addition to the other ones that we do recommend approval of earlier. So I'd be happy to try to introduce that if the commission so desired.
Please.
Essentially, what we will be recommending at this point is that you would make all the findings that are listed in the staff report, and then additionally, you know, we would have you find that special circumstances are applicable to this property. You know, given the fact that it's 40 feet wide, which is a substandard in width, it's substandard in minimum area for that plan, and such that those do represent special circumstances, and thus then granting the variance would allow speaking of the FOIA ratio specifically, would allow the property owner to enjoy similar as compared to other parcels in that same zoning classification. And if you were able to make findings along those lines on finding number 2, then you can make all the required findings and you can approve the project as proposed.
Okay, so shall we have a vote on what Mr. Tilley just proposed?
I'll see if I can.
Okay.
Fumble through this one. I will move staff's recommended action with the exception of number 6, because commission finds that finding number 2 can't, regarding special circumstances, can be met due to the substandard size for of the lot for zone R3. Changing it would allow the project applicant to build a home that is appropriate for the neighborhood. And with that, we would also need to change condition and measures number 4. The floor area ratio of the new single-family home shall not exceed 0.69.
But you probably wouldn't approve the staff recommended action.
With the exception
With
of
the
number
exception.
6.
Okay, thank you.
Before we move forward, can I ask a couple more questions? Sorry. Can I ask questions relating to the plan? Because you know the plan. I'm just trying to get digging in. It looks like there's a washer dryer on both floors. Is that, and then 2 separate entries? I'm just trying to understand because I want to do this right.
Yes, I think what if this were to it is obviously might be somewhat unusual to have separate washer dryer, but really what the crux of it is in terms of becoming a 1 unit versus 2 units is the presence of a second kitchen. And so the lack of the second kitchen, although a home may have a separate entrance, the lack of a separate kitchen means that it truly is still one unit.
So the wet bar is probably not going to become a kitchen.
Well, if it did, it wouldn't be the first one to happen to that. I can tell you that. But kitchen. So kitchen, we would look for the plumbing. We would look for like 220 power for a stove.
Okay.
Things of those nature. So we will be looking at those closely when the building permit plans come in. But this is a somewhat common format where we see units that are sort of straddling between the single family and a 2-unit structure, but is under building code is technically not a 2-unit structure.
I'd second the motion.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Liebig and a second by Commissioner Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Any
Motion
interested
passed.
party may appeal tonight's decision by the Planning Commission to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the city clerk within 15 days of tonight's action, and the appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
Welcome to WESAC. Thank you. Okay, on to the last item, number 4. Public hearing regarding the resolutions 13-PC, 13-3PC, and 13-4PC regarding amendments to the zoning ordinance. At this time, Commissioner Sandine?
Chair Perez, I'd like to recuse myself for deliberations on the vote on the brewery-related item.
Okay.
I'm not sure you're taking that up first?
Yes.
Okay, I will be back.
Thank you.
So before Sandra gives her staff report, I just want to, go over a little bit just how we're going to how we'd like to conduct this item tonight, a little bit different. So we will actually be asking you to take 2 separate votes tonight. One regarding the resolution that pertains to the brewery matters, and then another vote on the other 2 items, other 2 resolutions, which you could do together if you so choose. So Sandra shortly here will give her staff report as it pertains to the brewery matter. We'll conduct the public hearing on that. Do questions as usual, and then we will seek a vote on that resolution 13-2, which is the one that pertains to breweries, and then after that we will invite Commissioner Sandine back in, and then we will take up the rest. But we would request that you take 2 votes this evening, thus allowing Commissioner Sandine to participate in the rest of the deliberations on the other matters that she does not have a conflict related to. So with that, I'll ask Sandra if you would like to bring your presentation.
The Planning Commission conducted a public workshop on June 6th on the proposal to amend the definition for breweries to allow tasting rooms. Staff subsequently met with the Chamber of Commerce on June 11th and to discuss the proposed amendment, and they are supportive of the proposed change. So with that said, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing on Resolution 13-2PC, recommending that the City Council adopt Ordinance 13-5 as it pertains to breweries and approve Resolution 13-2PC.
Okay, questions?
Sandra, that resolution also included the wineries, correct?
No, that's a separate
So
resolution.
that one actually put on.
That's
got
a
put on
separate
together.
resolution.
Yes,
Okay.
we do have 2 resolutions that point to the same ordinance, so we are trying to, finesse this a little bit tonight.
Okay.
So we apologize for making it a little more complicated than it otherwise, could have been. But so at this time, unless the commission has additional questions, we would recommend that you open the public hearing on this particular matter and take any testimony there may be, and then return it to your commission for deliberation.
Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing, and I have one request to speak. Mr. Tendick?
Good evening,
Good
Commission. My name is AJ Tendick. I'm a local resident as well as an owner of Pipe Dog Brewing Company. We're a new nano brewery that's licensed and in town right off Industrial Boulevard. Before we came to town, we did a significant amount of research on zoning throughout California on breweries, and there's a good reason why we're here beyond me just living here, is what that the staff, and I'm sure it went to the commission, was proactive a year or so ago on zoning for breweries. So we certainly appreciate the effort to expand the tasting rooms allowance. Really, for our space, an extra 10%. It's not a huge amount, but it is significant based on our layout. But so that said, I think the staff did a great job in the measure, or in the item for describing other areas. So mostly, I'm here to voice my support and offer any comments or or answer any questions if you happen to have any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions?
But can I ask him, why 30%? What do you think is the key that makes that work? Is 30% for a tasting ability? I mean, it can't be to put out your product to sell.
Staff developed the percentage. That wasn't necessarily coming from us. It happens to fit pretty well for our space, but so I don't know that there's a direct significance to 30% other than it's
I
clearly.
was just curious how you thought that would be beneficial to your operation. Just yours.
Because it's more than 20%.
You're absolutely right. I mean, are you trying to just put your product out for people to see in that 30%? Or have a tasting room also? Is that the
Yeah,
idea?
no, it's a tasting room. It'll have, it's very clearly you're walking into a brewery. It has a big cold box that's, nothing fancy. It looks like you're in the back end of a restaurant or something like that where we store our kegs and cold product. And you drill a hole in it and you stick a tap in there and all of a sudden you've got a tasting space now. So yeah, we would operate it as a tasting space, invite people to come taste it, and as well as be able to buy beer to go. Both of which are allowed based on our state license as a microbrewer.
Thank you.
No questions? No?
I'll move the recommended action on 13.2 PC.
We've
Oh, I'm sorry.
we've closed the public hearing.
first.
Thank you.
I am horrible at that.
At
Well,
this-
you're in a hurry, but can I ask one question before we move forward with this one?
Sure.
And it goes with, it kind of went with the winery operation and the brewery, and I didn't know quite how all this was going to go. Are they acceptable in the industrial zones?
Yes, breweries are a permitted use in the industrial zone, and we will be, part of what we're considering as it pertains to wineries is something, similar in this, similar small winery, startup facility in industrial districts. To the extent these facilities were going into commercial districts, this 20-30% thing, wouldn't be into play. This is really about, since this is an industrial area and that needs to remain its industrial focus, and that's the primary purpose of that zone is for industrial operations.
Well, and I totally agree. I think that's a grand idea. Where else can they be, though? I was kind of reading here that it was looking like business park and then maybe even the waterfront area, and I'm not sure I like that at all.
No, that's the M3 zone, waterfront industrial, the M3 zone. There's a waterfront zone, and there's a waterfront commercial zone, waterfront industrial zone.
Where would that-
The waterfront industrial zone is an M3 zone. That's an industrial.
Where would that be, Sandra?
That's like near the port.
Oh, in the
Yeah,
port area?
Yeah, we have,
Okay.
Yeah, around
we have
port.
very limited properties zoned M3. It's kind
Well,
of
I guess I
Channel
was
Seaport
thinking
area.
that I didn't want it by the River Cats
Yeah,
area.
that's a completely different zone. That'd be a waterfront, WF.
Yeah.
This would be the waterfront industrial. I know it's kind of confusing. The waterfront industrial zone is an M3 zone.
And you're good at doing that to me. That was my question. As long as that's how it is,
That's
fine.
how it is.
Thank you.
Mhm. Sure.
Okay, now we can go ahead.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and now close the public hearing and entertain any motions.
I'll move the recommended action for Resolution 13.2 PC.
Second?
Okay, that was a motion by Commissioner Liebig and a second by Commissioner Guerrero. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great.
So at this time, we'll allow Commissioner Sandine to return to dais, and Sandra can continue with her report on the rest of the zoning items tonight.
Planning Commission conducted a public workshop on the proposed amendments on June 6th, and staff met with the Chamber of Commerce on June 11th and June 9th to discuss proposed changes, and the Chamber is supportive of the proposed amendments. Since the Economic Development Advisory Commission acts in an advisory capacity to the Council on matters concerning general economic development, business, and marketing, amendments related to fencing, signage, and temporary seasonal sales will be presented to the EDAC on next week on July 24th. And these items will be scheduled for consideration at the August 15th Planning Commission meeting, which will allow the Commission at that time to consider any feedback and input from EDAC at that time. Since the commission expressed support for the changes proposed for front yard landscaping, detached accessory structures, boat repair, sensitive land uses, density bonus, and reasonable accommodation, these amendments are being considered at tonight's meeting for recommendation to the City Council. Just one more comment I want to make regarding wineries. This was actually brought up by the Chamber, and they recommended that the change that is being proposed for wineries also be applicable to wineries. In terms of this required us to come up with a definition for winery, which is shown in your staff report, and also in terms of land use, wineries are similar to breweries, and so where breweries are allowed, we're also recommending that wineries be allowed also. So that means that wineries would be conditional in the business park zone and permitted in the limited industrial, the light industrial, heavy industrial, and waterfront industrial zones. Staff is recommends that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing on Resolution 13-3 PC, recommending that the City Council adopt Ordinance 13-5, recommending miscellaneous changes to the zoning ordinance, and conduct the public hearing on Resolution 13-4 PC, recommending that the City Council adopt Ordinance 13-3 and Ordinance 13-4 regarding density bonus and reasonable accommodation. And I've failed to mention that the reason that we develop a separate resolution for the mandated ordinances is that because they will be proceeding independent of the other zone changes. These ordinances will be will facilitate the implementation of the updated housing element, and so we want to have those proceed on their own separate track. And so those ordinances will proceed to the City Council next month, the mandated ordinances, provided that you say it's okay.
Thank you, Sandra. Do we have any questions or for staff? Commissioner Liebman?
Oh, sure. Thank you, staff, for getting this all together and taking it to all the different groups. Are there any other craft businesses that could benefit from tasting rooms that we're not quite considering? I can't think of a cheesemaker in town, but
I can't think of any.
We do have one that is something along those lines that is being kicked around. However, they're looking at a non-industrial zone, so they would be in a more of a retail capacity. So this floor area limitation really wouldn't be applicable, to them and that for that particular context. We certainly could, entertain other things along the lines that want to have a production facility and a quasi-retail environment, in there. This certainly is a phenomenon that's only increasing, and I think we'll be looking at it also as part of the general plan is, when we say industrial, what do we really mean by, industrial? Because these facilities are going in these zones not necessarily because they want to be an industrial zone, but quite frankly, it's because the space is about a quarter of the price of a retail, space. So it is largely a matter of economics for them.
I would be open to the idea of expanding this to other craft businesses in the future, although I can't just think of any right now that we already have. So, and I also think this is, I'm not sure what part of resolution this is, the sensitive land uses, pulling religious institutions in. Would this limit their ability to put a cell phone tower anywhere near their property?
No, this is unrelated to cell phone towers. This is if these type of uses want to go in near these M3 properties.
I'm sorry, I was referring now to the sensitive land uses?
Yes.
Change? Okay.
Yeah,
So
no,
would that limit our ability to approve cell phone towers near? Okay.
No, it has nothing to do with
Thank
that.
you. Those are all my questions.
I didn't have a question until Mr. Liebig spoke about because I just was traveling at a conference and I was in a city that had a chocolate tasting room that manufactured chocolate. So I think it was in San Francisco and it was in an industrial park. So I think you're onto something. I think as we're, maybe the next iteration and the next look, we'll have other
Chocolate
things.
tasting?
Cheese, chocolate.
I was thinking more of a general craft. I'm sorry.
Yes.
actually have no comments here. I thought, Sandra, you did a great job, and it really helped that you took it to the other groups to look at, because I think that kind of reinforced what we talked about, and it came out very well, I thought. So I thought you did a great job.
We will be back on zoning ordinance topics, the rest of them, next month after we've gone to EDAC.
Oh, the good ones are yet to come.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Commissioner Guerrero?
I just want to say I really appreciate my fellow commissioners' taste and interest and growth in the city. I think that's brings us great opportunities. So definitely put our feelers out to see what we can find and draw to our community. And I also appreciate the report. It helped a lot to help me to understand what was going on and brought together, the feedback. And it just gives me a better sense that, we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
I will, at this time, go ahead and open the public hearing. I don't have any requests to speak, so I will then close the public hearing. And I, too, appreciate your report, Sandra. It was very thorough, and I didn't have any questions. So could I have a motion?
Oh, if we're all ready, I will move that we approve resolutions 13-3 PC and 13-4 PC.
I'll second that.
Okay, that was motioned by Commissioner Liebig and seconded by Commissioner Sandin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda here. So at this time, could I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
There's a thing before
Oh.
that,
Yes.
because I actually have a question.
Informal discussion.
Oh, that's right, informal
That's right.
discussion.
Informal discussion.
I was going to thank our vice chair for stepping in to serve as chair this evening. Thank you. Very good job.
Another
Yes.
great job. I have one question for you that I don't quite know how it worked. And when the Sikh temple started a school, it had to come before the planning commission, and the one across the street at Dalaram or the old El Run, it did not?
We actually, I think what we did on that one was we actually changed the zoning ordinance to make K-12 permitted use in the Central Business District. Is that what we did?
I think that's what we did.
Oh, okay. I was just curious why it didn't come here.
Yeah, and
I've been asked that, and I didn't know.
Yeah, the zoning is, different in those different parts of
Perfect.
town.
Thank you.
So
With
otherwise-
that, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
I have a
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had a complaint from a neighbor about a property, and just wanted a little guidance on what we can do. And I think they've submitted correspondence regarding this property. It's on the corner of Jefferson and Marshall. It's a building, a structure, and there's some graffiti and things are overgrown there. Just wanted to see if we can address that.
Yeah, that property is already well under the code enforcement action right away. I expect that building to be demoed shortly. I know which building you're referring to, and that's been subject to code enforcement action now for a little while.
Okay. All right, good.
We will remind them on that. And just
Let my neighbor know.
And so otherwise, for a formal discussion, we will cancel our next regularly scheduled meeting, which would have been on August 1st. But we will be back here on August 15th for more zoning changes and perhaps some other stuff, too.
Great.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting, aye, meeting adjourned.